So welcome to this short demonstration of the European Connected Regional Airport, the ECRA tool. This is the view that you have when you launch the tool. This particular view is sometimes referred to as the ECRA front end. So this is the main graphical user interface whereby we show the information to the user and that we provide the facility to dialogue with the system. There is also the ECRA backend, which is somewhat invisible to the user. This is where the calculations are taking place, and also importantly, where the DPI messages are being constructed and subsequently transmitted to the network manager at the appropriate time for the appropriate flights. So on the left-hand side, we have a set of icons which are used for navigating through the tool and bringing up the different views that are possible as part of ECRA. The airport that we are currently looking at the data for is Lima Fox Sierra Bravo. So this is Bâle Airport. The reason I chose Bâle is simply because it's one of our connected airports, and so the amount of information that we're sharing with Bâle is very high. The normal display is to show information throughout the entire day, but we can show information relating just for forthcoming flights. Now, this first view is called the airport transit view. This is the most commonly used view within ECRA, and it's providing a view of from an airport perspective of a rotation. So it's containing information from the inbound flight, the turnaround, and then the subsequent departing flight for that same aircraft. The data is split into a number of columns showing information in a CDM philosophy, so keys, timestamps relating to the aircraft. And also for each time value, we append the information with either an A to indicate that it's actual information, so it's an event that has occurred, and you have the time value of when that event occurred, whether it's an estimate, so coming from flight plan data, for example, or whether it's a prediction that the system, the ECRA system, is providing itself. So if we go through the different columns in a little bit more detail, from left to right, we have information relating to the aircraft registration and its type, the ICAO and IATA information relating to the arrival flight plan, the similar for the departing flight plan, and then the next column is actually indicating the rotation that we're looking at. So in this particular case, it's a flight from Budapest inbound to Bâle, and then that airframe will leave Bâle and go to Malaga. Its current status is in block. And if we have the ADS-B availability at the airport, which is the case for Bâle, then we can indicate as well the arrival and departure runway and the SIP. The next columns are relating to the inbound flight. So we have the landing time, either an estimate or the actual, the schedule information, and then similarly the in-block time, again an estimate or the actual. If we have a connection to the local airport operations database, which is by no means necessary for the use of ECRA, but if we do have that connection, then we are able to provide parking gate information, and I'll come back to that a little bit later in this demonstration. Then we have information relating to the departing flights, again, schedule information, off-block information, again, either an estimate or the actual, when the aircraft does go off-block. And then we have two new columns, which are new in ECRA 2. These are relating to predictions of the off-block time and predictions of the startup approval time. And these predictions are taking into account both the schedule and the arrival time of the inbound aircraft. So we would expect, for example, that if an inbound aircraft was late and the minimum turnaround time was such that it would not meet its schedule off block time, then we provide an indication of the likely off block time through this POBT field. And then the predicted startup approval time will also take into account the CTOP value if the flight is regulated. And then we have columns relating to the target takeoff time, and the takeoff time, again, either an estimate from the flight plan or the actual. Then the final column is essentially the dialogue facility. So, for example, we have a number of dialogue possibilities, in this particular case relating to cancelled DPI messages or the transmission of an ADPI. And that is done through this particular window here. And we'll go into a lot more detail about this kind of dialogue functionality if your airport joins the project, where there'll be much more opportunity to do that. The next window is really a subset of the airport transit view, providing information relating specifically to the arrival flights, and then the same for the departure flights. And then a window dedicated to air traffic control, providing ATC with specific ICAO information relating to the departing flights. And again, the dialog boxes on the right-hand side to provide ATC with the functionality that they would need as a function of the local operating procedures. And as with the airport transit view and the other two views, the same philosophy. We indicate where the data is an actual, a prediction, or an estimate, and update that in real time throughout the display. The next view we have is what we call the network performance monitoring view. And this is a very detailed view, and there are several ways of looking at this view. So before we go into details about the different circles and their colors and the lines and so on, at the very highest level, what this view is indicating is a map-based view of the traffic which is inbound to Bâle today, and the origin airports from where that traffic is coming from. And the size of the circle of the origin airport is indicative of the number of flights that airport is sending to Bâle today. So the bigger the circle, the more flights inbound to Bâle. The color of the circle is indicating the global punctuality performance of the airport, that particular airport today. So split into a number of different categories. So green if the punctuality is above 80%, yellow if it's between 60 and 80, and red if the departure punctuality goes below 60%. Then the line between the origin airport and Bâle is indicating the delay or even early arrival time for the specific flights that airport is sending to Bâle. So, for example, if what's good about this particular view is you can just simply hover the mouse over a certain zone. So, for example, we see today that Tenerife South has quite a low departure punctuality. So it's in the red zone at departure punctuality of 50%. But the single flight that it's sending to Bâle is actually somewhat ahead of schedule. So really what this enables us to do on several different levels is to say, well, what is my inbound traffic looking like? Where's it coming from? What is the performance globally of those airports that are sending flights to me? And what is the performance of those specific flights in terms of their adherence to the schedule inbound to the aircraft, so to the airport? So it's potentially a good indicator for the airport of seeing how the traffic could potentially deviate from the baseline schedule. And as far as these different views are concerned, for example, it's possible clicking on these different radio buttons to exclude certain delays. So if, for example, there's no red here today in terms of specific flights, but if I wanted to just look at the flights with a greater than 30-minute delay inbound to my airport, then I could rapidly do that through deselecting these different radio buttons. Now, the next view that I want to show you is called the passenger monitoring view. This is a artificial intelligence, machine learning based model. So it's a model-based prediction, and the machine learning aspect is essentially the model has been trained using ticket price data. So we have access to ticket price data, and we're using that ticket price data to predict the load factor on a specific flight. And then we put all of that information together for the flights to actually taking into account their timings and so on, to actually provide a profile throughout the day of the predicted number of passengers at the security check for departing flights. So we will at some point in the future start to work also on including the arrival traffic. For the moment, it's just the departing flights. So in much the same way, for example, as an airline revenue management system will adapt the ticket price as a function of the load factor, we are actually through our model doing the inverse, and we're trying to predict the load factor from the ticket price. At the airports that so it remains a prediction, it's not 100% perfectly accurate, but those airports that we have done baseline comparison exercises with are producing very good results. Now, I mentioned earlier the possibility of connecting to the local ALDB and recuperating stand information. So if we do that activity, so we don't have that in BAL, but if we did do that activity, what you would see on this particular display is a list of the different parking stands, and then a Gantt chart view against each stand of the occupancy indicating the call sign, so the arrival and expected off-block time for each particular flight. So that view can potentially be quite useful for situational awareness from a parking stand perspective. Another view which is still also under development is what we call the airport performance dashboard. And here, what we want to try to do is to develop in the future a richer list of key performance indicators around how the airport and turnaround processes are performing. And we will, as those become further developed within the tool, they will be included into this particular view. And so that when you connect with ECRA over time, you'll start to see evolutions in this particular performance dashboard as well. So that's a global overview of the ECRA tool. The key elements really to bear in mind, as I said at the beginning, is it's a fusion of different data sources, providing an indication of whether the information is a prediction, an estimate, or an actual, and being updated in real time. So I hope that was clear, and that you now have a much better idea of what ECRA looks like and what it's capable of perhaps bringing to your airport. So thank you for your attention.